Okay. So just to pick up where we left off 2 weeks ago, I'll leave that here. There. So what we learned from our discussion with globalization so far, this is as of November 25. So we looked at the following cities and sort of countries. Los Angeles, Petersburg, Tokyo, Shanghai, and India sort of started participating in global trade and also restructuring of their governments and basically restructuring of their economy at differing times for more or less within about a decade of each other. So Los Angeles restructured for more foreign-friendly policies in 2011. Petersburg, I think even earlier, around the 18th century, with major changes in 2007. Tokyo earlier at 1980. Shanghai between 1870 to the year 2000, and then India in 1991. All with differing reasons. For those in Asia, which we'll see in a bit, it's most likely due to the Asian financial crisis of the 1990s. So our working definition for globalization now, as it evolved from our discussions through class, is when a country, region, or city changes policies to participate in foreign trade, and it usually translates to FDI growth. However, globalization in the sort of discussion of urban economics not only includes economic development, but also ideological or what they call this, trade of ideas and sort of beliefs. And then some notes here on globalization and economic development. Technically includes any foreign trade or activity. For our class, it means dramatic policy changes that favor foreign trade. So how do we measure globalization? We take a look at the Gini index, FDI values, GDP, GNP. It's that I will discuss it in a bit. There's a difference in GDP and GNP. That's gross domestic product and gross national product. And then here we have common to all presentations. There's a shift from to service sector from manufacturing, because currently the trend for globalization is really in the service sector. But that will pose a problem for those economies that are still emerging or are not part of the sort of the in crowd or the developed economies. Core cities that experience globalization have increased property values. It causes citizens to move out. And then globalization does not always result in, does result in higher FDI, but does not mean that income is distributed fairly. So if you look at the Gini index of the following cities and country, India, there's Los Angeles at 48, St. Petersburg 36, Tokyo at 57, and Shanghai at 36. On the national level, India is at a 34% Gini index. So I didn't get time to do the Gini index for Korea. I'll just do that here. So technically, this is South Korea, because North Korea is, I don't know if there are any studies on North Korea. So this is by Sang-Shuel Cho, written 2005, The Impacts of Globalization on the Spatial Economic System in South Korea. So again, we're looking at trying to analyze our FASAR, or factors affecting spatial allocation of resources. And sort of you can apply with your own research, because I didn't have time to do my own. What is the FDI, the GI, and PPP of Korea, to see how it stacks against India. And I can also provide that at a later date, most likely by Monday. Okay, and also changes in built infrastructure and the built environment. Okay, so overview of Korea. Sorry, there's some notes here that needs to be updated. I'll just delete that. So Korea is a bit unique, or South Korea in particular is a bit unique, because it has a framework of presidential representative, the framework of a presidential representative democratic republic, whereby the president is the head of the state and of a multi-party system. So it's looking very much. This is a very unique system. It's not a sort of hierarchical diagram. We have the president here, head of the executive branch, the National Assembly, who leads the legislative branch, the lawmaking body, and the judicial branch, the Supreme Court, in charge of impeachment trials, judges on constitutional laws. So what do you call this? Both the president appoints people to the Supreme Court. The National Assembly consents to those who are appointed, and then basically the Supreme Court's in charge of, I guess, laws, if in the most general sense, and the president is in charge of what do you call this? Let's see, where does a president in charge of? Just basically, it seems like directly appointing Supreme Court and appointing the prime ministers who are in charge of executive policy. So the prime minister is here creating the executive policy, which also connects to the economic policies. And then National Assembly, let's see where the line goes, legislates, inspects affairs of the state, and consents to the prime minister. Basically, our decision-making body here for urban and economic policies is the prime minister, which is under the National Assembly and the president. So that's very messy. So let's take a look at the different regions in Korea, South Korea. There's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sort of major states. That's Gangwon in the north, Gyeonggi to the west, Incheon to the far west, and then Seoul here with its own region. That's equivalent of the National Capital Region. There's South Chungcheong, Sejong, North Chungcheong, Daejeon, North Gyeongsang, Daegu, Ulsan, Busan, and South Gyeongsang, North Jeolla, South Jeolla, and then Gwanglu and Jeju here. Jeju at the southmost. So there's actually more. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 or 16 if I counted correctly. Anyway, so this paper discusses trends in Korean urbanization during the era of increasing globalization. So similar to India, India shifted to a more, what do you call this? Shifted to more liberal trading, open market policies around the 1990s. So much of the earlier globalization bypassed Korea, except for the sense that its industrial growth was propelled forward by export expansion. So more recently, however, this is around the 2000s, Korea has had to face the impacts of globalization on the internal dynamics of the Korean economy and its cities. Trade liberalization, market opening, and foreign direct investment. So these are the key sort of tools that they use to join or to enter globalization. This has resulted in severe adjustment problems in terms of economic structure, meaning the transition to high-order services has probably been too slow, and that the urban hierarchy reinforcing the larger cities, especially Seoul. So there are opportunities and goals to, similar to India, is that's to attract global events, to build up Seoul as a symbolic land bridge linking China and Japan. However, the government has not yet developed a viable trade-off between dispersal policies aimed at achieving balanced regional development and the implicit spatial consequences of accommodating globalization. So in simpler terms, similar to India, there is a lot of economic gain at the national level, but there's not much or income distribution has not trickled down to the local level. So Seoul is indeed growing economically and also is urbanizing as well, but sort of the benefits of globalization is only felt at the national level and not so much at the local level. Okay, so the main issue in South Korea's globalization in the 1990s was the Asian economic crisis. So many firms and governments were forced to restructure, generating significant unemployment in Asian countries. Urban infrastructure building and housing construction were delayed because of the shortage of funds created by the financial crisis. So this is the first time that ordinary citizens in Asia felt the impact of globalization in real, concrete terms. Many Asian countries have been globalizing over 2 or 3 decades in the sense that their economies have become increasingly integrated toward the world economy. However, increasing trade and investment in Asia has indeed forced uh, Asia to participate in rapid economic growth in the 1970s and 80s. Korea, in particular, and other Asian countries have liberalized their trade regimes and adopted policies of receiving foreign direct investment. So, I seem to have misplaced, but here basically, Korea and other Asian countries are forced to participate in globalization because of the 1990 Asian economic crisis, shifting from a what they call manufacturing sort of economy to become a service economy. And just this diagram here, just based on my understanding of the material, is that because the shift to service from manufacturing to service was so abrupt, they lost this manufacturing base, which is causing a lot of problems internally in Korea. So if you think of the different economic sectors as a pyramid, without a manufacturing base, they cannot sustain a kanang service sector. The primary sector here, just for the video, is energy extraction, mining, agriculture, forestry, and fishing. So this is one of also the main issues in the Philippines for our agricultural sector, and I guess the rest of Asia as well. The agricultural sector is more or less being left behind, and it resulted in initial economic gains and benefits for the country, but now it's sort of fighting back or kind of negatively impacting a lot of Asian countries. So with the reduced primary and secondary manufacturing sector, they cannot sustain a tertiary or service sector. So we'll see that in a bit. But I'll talk about the Asian financial crisis very quickly. So in 1997, the Asian financial crisis was a period of financial crisis that gripped much of East and Southeast Asia. This began in Thailand, mostly because Thailand had a financial collapse because their Thai baht, after the what they call this, they borrowed a lot of money basically from the US. So the Thai government was forced to float the baht due to lack of foreign currency to support its currency to the US dollar. Capital flight ensued almost immediately, beginning an international chain reaction. At the same time, Thailand acquired a burden of foreign debt. So basically, they promised to, what do you call this, pay the US back. I don't know the details of that, why it failed. Let's see here. There was a meltdown in sort of the financial situation in Thailand, and that caused a trickle effect, which affected Southeast Asian countries, such as and later Japan and South Korea saw slumping currencies, devalued stock markets, and other asset prices, and a precipitous rise in private debt. So here is the impact of the sort of growth per capita. Annual GDP growth per capita from 1990 to 2021. This is from Our World in Data, and you can see the dip here in GDP growth, and exactly around 1998 or 1997. So I mapped out here Singapore, China, India, United States, South Korea, Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia. So you can just see where Korea sits. So Korea here is in the green. So that's the green line here. So it went down to about negative maybe 6%. The other biggest loser here was, I think, let's see here. Did I put Thailand here? I forgot to put Thailand. So I just want to show you guys that this website here, you can input. I'll share it to the class. Okay, here. Okay, Tadrick has a problem with Wi-Fi. Okay, we'll just send him the recording then. Okay, so this website here, we can actually add countries here. I forgot to put Thailand in. There we go. Okay, Thailand is in gray. So is it in my... Okay, now let's make this full screen. So Thailand is here. Let's look at 1998. So this year, 1998, Thailand went down to about almost minus 8%. While the biggest loser is, let's see here, Indonesia went down to over negative what? It looks like beyond the graph already, maybe negative 15. South Korea went down to negative 3%, as I mentioned earlier. Around the same time, Philippines was at, let's say, around the negative 4. And then India, where's India? Did I put India? I didn't put India here. India. India around this time, 1990s, actually was growing. If you see the graph here, if you see the graph, nearing 1998 and 1999, India was actually growing, although it did dip a bit in the early sort of maybe 1996. It recovered very quickly, one of the fastest recoveries. You see Singapore here as well, also impacted by that. So it was really a crisis all over Asia. And just to sort of satisfy my curiosity, I want to look at the US, see if the US was impacted by this. So United States, no impact at all. So you can see around the 1998 period, this financial crisis did not impact US. So this was really localized to Asia. Okay, so the causes of the debacle or the crisis are many and disputed. Basically, Thailand's economy developed into an economic bubble fueled by hot money. Basically, a lot of short-term lending and borrowing, and also kind of distribution of money. More and more was required as the size of the bubble grew. And the same type of situation happened in Malaysia and Indonesia, which had added complication of what was called crony capitalism. Basically, Thailand and other countries who were borrowing from Thailand, when the bubble burst, lost a lot of money, meaning they couldn't pay back the money. They made a lot of loans, a lot of borrowing, and nobody could pay up. So that caused the crisis. So if you see here, this is another graph. This is gross national product, if I'm not mistaken. Let me go back to my slides here. Yeah, this is, sorry, GDP pa de. So these are two slides, GDP. So this first diagram here is GDP per capita in terms of percentage growth. And here is GDP per capita in terms of US dollars. So meaning the amount of US dollars that that particular country has. So if we look at, I'll go to the website here because it's more animated. So let's go to, if I move the bar here to 1997, there. So you can see Korea in green. There's a dip here. I think we'll just move that to 1998. Yeah, the dip is really in 1998. India is in red here. Not so much impact as we saw in the GDP growth percentage. Let's take a look at, let me see here. Add item to chart. Let's add Thailand. Element OPQRS. Thailand, there. Okay. So Thailand is in the red. So over here, it dipped a bit from, let's say, it 2.85 thousand US dollars per capita to 1.85 thousand US dollars per capita. And then you see here the world economy here pretty much remained the same. If you look at the advanced economies, there was a slight dip from like 1995, around 28.6 thousand US dollars per capita to 26.2 US dollars per capita, but largely unaffected. And I want to highlight here, if you look at this graph, the US is in blue, and you can see the amount of US dollar per capita they have compared to Korea in green and Thailand here in red, and also in India in purple. So India is all the way here in the bottom. So their sort of earned US dollars per capita is way, way, way behind. Korea, and even more behind than the US. So this again reinforces the fact that globalization mostly benefits the developed countries or advanced economies, and the world and the emerging economies are kind of left behind, but still catching up. Okay, so I just want to take a tangent here to describe difference between GDP and GNP. So it interested me to really go into the difference because, like in the name, gross domestic is local, gross national product is like at the national level. But key thing to note here is that GNP counts the value of goods and services produced by a country's citizens, both domestically and abroad. Um, while GDP only measures those within the country's border. So you can use, economists use this each figure differently, but in our classes, we always use the GDP because we're trying to analyze the impact of globalization in within the local level. So I just wanted to point that out. So all those other texts are additional. That won't be in the exam. That's just something that I wanted to uh, air out or unpack. Anyway, so very quickly, the impacts of globalization on South Korea are as follows. There is a dominance of large cities. So with globalization and more kanang foreign friendly policies, the export-oriented growth strategy of Korea resulted in a South Korea in a premium on large cities and port cities, leading to a rapid growth in these particular types of cities. The large cities of Seoul, Busan, and Daegu were the magnets for rural migrant workers. So similar to India, when they shifted to globalization or more foreign-friendly policies, the large cities or the most popular cities became a magnet for rural migrant workers. So this is because of economic effects of agglomeration, basically economies of scale as well. Basically, when you have a lot of people in one place, it's easier to trade ideas, trade goods and services. So globalization largely benefits or benefits large cities more than rural areas, basically urban centers. Then number two, internationalization of cities and urban restructuring. So with South Korea participating in globalization, the megacity region was created. So this was the what do you call this? Megacities emerging in Pacific Asia is a result of the interdependency between globalization and urbanization. Um, in short, the key process or the key term here is growth spillovers. Again, that coming together of people, which is sort of fueled by globalization, also fuels even more urbanization, more new apartment buildings, which we saw in India, new offices, new hotels geared towards tourism, and this growth spills over to the cities like surrounding areas. And this creates what we call the megacity or a metropolitan region. And then in the national scale, larger cities and internationalization of cities and the birth of the megacity is, I guess, more or less good, but this leads to a deteriorating or degrading of rural economies, which, as I showed you earlier, is one of the important bases for kanang, the manufacturing and agricultural sector. So globalization, especially after the Uruguay round in 1994, so spreading to Uruguay, has had major impacts on rural areas via the lifting of tariff barriers on agricultural products. On the top of intrinsic weaknesses of Korean agricultural sector, the opening of agricultural products to the world market has resulted in near panic. Basically, what happened in Korea was that when they opened up foreign trade in Korea, there was better products that were being imported. Specifically, it was, I'll go back to the document here. It had Philippine bananas. Let's see here. Large cities, rural. Okay, here. So let's see here. So the Jeju province, which was sort of known for producing tangerines, that kind of orange, lost a lot of its income from the importation of what's here, replaced by California oranges and Filipino bananas. It's funny that they wrote Filipino with Pilipino. So there's a lot of typos in this particular article, most likely because of translation, because it is a Korean author after all. So basically, opening of or the easing of foreign trade had a negative impact on rural economies because there was better, cheaper products abroad, and the local products could not compete, which resulted in sort of more people becoming disinterested in agriculture and wanting to shift to another career or another job in the city. So this is a table from the article showing you sort of the growth and the distribution of cities by size and selected years. So if you see here in the 1960s, there were no cities that were over 5 million in Korea. By the 1970s, there was one with a population of 5.5 million, and then it slowly grew. And if you look at the, what do you call this? By 1996, and let's say the 2000s, after the major restructuring, it doubled. So about 30 years later, it doubled from 5 million to 10 million. And then the number of cities that had 1 to 5 million people grew from 2 cities in 1960 to 6 cities in 2000. And then over here, if I wanted to highlight the cities with less than 0.1 million, or that's about 100,000 people, it also grew, meaning, what do you call this? There is a decrease in the population of rural areas because there are more cities that are having a population of less than 0.1 million. And there's a growing of cities that have 1 to 5 million or 0.5 to 1 million people. So try to imagine that the larger cities are becoming larger, and then that creates smaller cities around the periphery of those larger cities. So similar to what we saw in India. So you can see here, total nation population is increasing, but you can see the concentration of people really in the large cities. And there's a deflation, or what do you call this? Migration of cities from rural areas to urban areas. So what are the policy responses to sort of help manage the growth of the megacities and sort of revitalize the rural sector of Korea? So there are 4 policy responses. The change from interregional dispersal to intra-regional relocation. So the policy to help sort of spread people out, should bring them back to, or like give them a reason to stay in rural areas or create new urban cores. So policies to combat the polarization tendencies of urban growth have targeted the decentralization of population and industry away from the capital region. So they need to create new sort of urban regional centers. Next, from inward to outward development. So again, that inward is centralizing and they want to decentralize. So recognizing the local impact of the industrial decline that includes manufacturing and the agricultural sector, the central government has attempted to render support through the provision of industry rationalization funds and a general policy support for small and medium-sized enterprises. Basically, it's a subsidy from the government to these small and medium-sized enterprises. However, the timing of this policy was too little and too late, according to a study by Kim in 1995. Maybe that's the same. Oh no, our initial study was by a person named Lim. So that's one. Unfortunately, it has not yielded so much success. Next is decentralization, deregulation, and governance. Again, local governance plays a very important role in sort of managing the benefits and sustaining the benefits of globalization, where local governments have awakened by the challenges of global competition. They are now expressing their demand for a de-evolution of power from the central to the local level. So meaning the local regions, the local governments would have more sort of autonomy to create their policies to help support their small to medium-sized enterprises. And then finally, the emerging transnational urban coalition. So changes in the world economic order have brought pressure on the Northeast Asian countries to develop a new economic regionalism similar to the to the EU and NAFTA. Basically, Korea is joining a group of Asian countries similar to like the European Union or the NAFTA. I'm not sure what the abbreviation of NAFTA is. And I'll go into these policies in a bit. So the most relevant one for us in terms of urban planning is this plan to create development control zones. It's a bit messy. I'll zoom in a bit. Basically, they had two plans. So this is the map of Korea. I'll bring it back from page 1 here just so to compare. Like so. That's very small already. I'll just put it here on the side for now. Something like that. Okay, so the plan was, because of the attractiveness of the capital region was so strong, repeated policy attempts to decentralize population and industrial activities away from the capital region, which is here, sort of northwest of South Korea, very near the border already, but this is where Seoul is, and this is the national capital region. But because it was so attractive, policy attempts or changes have failed. However, the central government has not given up on its efforts. Decentralization policies centered on the capital region are probably the most elaborate in Asia. The establishment of manufacturing plants is strictly controlled in the congested areas of the capital region, and also other actions to promote population growth are discouraged within the capital region via tax penalties and withholding of development permits. So they're really limiting development here in the Seoul area. So this is highlighted here in this. This would be, let's see here. I'll bring up the map a bit bigger. So this would be in the Gyeonggi state or Gyeonggi, I guess, province, where Seoul is located. So that's the highlighted lines here, the thick lines on the map. So they had two plans: the first and second capital regional management plan. So the first capital region management plan was created between 1984 and 1996, which was introduced by the central government to curb or manage the concentration of population and industrial activities in the Seoul metropolitan region. The plan defined the jurisdictions of the Seoul Special City, the city of Incheon, and the Gyeonggi province as the capital region. This region was subject to capital region management law, which overrides all other laws related to the development activities in that region. However, as mentioned before, this sort of structure failed. Let me duplicate this so we can see what that structure was. It's also very messy in the document. So I'll just go over to the page here. Down here. Okay. So there were 5 zones. That's the dispersal encouragement zone, limited redevelopment zone, development reservation zone, growth promotion zone, and natural conservation zone. So we'll try to take a look at that over here. So this is the dispersal encouragement zone, again, near what they call this, Seoul. And then you have here development reservation zone. Let me double check. Development reservation to the north. Then we have natural conservation zone to the southeast. Then we have limited redevelopment zone to the southwest, middle southwest. Then we have the development promotion zone to the southernmost part of Korea. So they wanted more people to go south. They wanted to limit development here in the northern area, and they wanted to preserve the natural resources in the eastern area. However, that failed, and people continued to move to Seoul, the Seoul region. So they created a second plan. So I'll just move on to the next slide here. So I just put a short description here. The objective of the second plan is to enhance the agglomeration economies of the capital region with the intra-metropolitan redistribution of economic activities and an improved transportation system. Although population concentration in the capital region is still discouraged, the main concern has shifted from the inter-regional redistribution of population and economic activities to intra-regional relocation within the capital region itself. So basically, let's go through our map here. So instead of 5 zones, they only have 4 now. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They have the uh, congestion relief zone and 2 growth management zones. So the congestion relief zone includes Seoul over here, sort of the near middle north area. And basically, they changed their concept or their policy from moving people to the south to instead distributing them more evenly here in the middle part of South Korea, and also encouraging people to move to the north and also the south. So sort of this like gradual dispersion. Meanwhile, the eastern area is still reserved as a natural conservation zone. So that's their current strategy as of the 2000s. And then whether that will succeed, we'll still find out. I can do some additional research on that for next week. However, another sort of key policy response is the emerging transnational urban coalition. So similar to the European Union and other European European coalitions, Korea responded to this need to cooperate with other Asian countries by joining or I'm not sure if they're joining or they're creating their own. I'll just read here. An Asian, a transnational Asian urban coalition. So in addition to the economic superpower of Japan, the recent striking performance of the Chinese economy and its entry into the World Trade Organization has forced Korea to redefine its role in Northeast Asia. So Korea has historically played a role of land bridge between the maritime hegemony of Japan and the continental power of China. However, it now hopes to become a logistic hub, linking the Pacific Rim countries to the Euro-Asian continent. To this end, Korea has built a state-of-the-art international airport in Incheon. So if we look at the map here, Incheon is here, near the central western area of Seoul. A container hub port in Gwangyang. So Gwangyang where's Gwangyang? Let's see. I can't find it on the map. I guess we'll just Google it later. And it's reconnecting the Trans-Korea Railway through North Korea. So connecting, what do you call this? China and South Korea through North Korea. So they created this inverted S-shaped corridor from Beijing here in the west to Tokyo here in the east. Via Pyongyang and Seoul, there are about 100 million urban inhabitants and 112 cities with a population greater than 200,000 that are the most contiguous along the 1.5 kilometer strip of densely populated land. So hopefully this transnational urban corridor will help them sort of manage whatever resources they lack to help them with the creating or sort of revitalizing their, I'll go back to my slide here, their primary sector, which is the agricultural sector, and the secondary manufacturing sector to help sustain its service sector. So whether that will pan out, we will see in the future. I want to see where Gwangyang is very quickly. Gwangyang. City in South Korea. Let's look at maps. I'm going to guess it's on the southern side just based on the... Okay, so Gwangyang is here. And then their Incheon Airport is somewhere here. And the S would look something... Where is Beijing? Where is Beijing? Let's see, Beijing. Oh. Is that, please? So Beijing is there. So the traveling or the connection will be something like this. South Korea, going down here, up Japan to Tokyo. So about that. So the book says 1,500 kilometers. Measuring it in Google Maps yields about 2,600 kilometers. So my measuring is a bit off, but this is the inverted S, which you see over here. Okay. So conclusion for this, there's a blank space here for me to highlight key points. So globalization has posed opportunities as well as threats to Korean cities. Opportunities include, I'll just highlight here, opportunities. Let's see. Do, 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 do. Uh, let's see. I'll just put a bullet here. The hope to share in globalization benefits offered by prospects, uh, offered by locational advantages of being a land bridge country between two great hegemonic powers, Japan and China. So I'll just put that. I'll reword that better, but apparently that's the way it's written in the book. Again, it could be because of translation. Next, all large coastal cities aim to become logistic hubs for Northeast Asia and the Pacific Rim. Large cities want to have international functions of one kind or another to exploit their competitive edge. On the other hand, threats, I'll just highlight the threats here, such as the marginalization of peripheral cities outside the core city region, this accelerated growth of the accelerated growth of the mega city regions. Threats. Excuse me. Okay. Also, the hollowing out of manufacturing base in the Korea cities has had an impact, especially because of some high-order economic functions have been slow to catch up. Nevertheless, many urban Koreans are slowly realizing that globalization is an irreversible trend, and they have to live with it. So if you look at the opportunities again, they're basically taking opportunity of their geographic location between China and Japan, and the threat is the marginalization of the cities outside the core, and also the degradation. I'll just put here. On this, basically, there's more threats than opportunities, and the degradation of rural. How did they word it here? Of rural economies. Okay. Then, however, national urbanization policies are still very much ambivalent, meaning kind of like just in the middle of the road, not really deciding on whether they will push through with more globalization. The dispersal of industry and population from large cities have continued to soothe regionalism and to buy political legitimacy. However, this has also heralded open competition and market orientedness among regions and cities. Korea's globalization drive has been dominated by state catch-up policies with one-sided global involvement. In this respect, globalization is at stake in Korea and the rest of Northeast Asia because they have not experienced globalization with the same vigor as in many of the European and Atlantic Rim countries. So the Hanseatic spirit of the free city, mercantilism, and global consciousness has not yet emerged because the Northeast Asian countries and their cities have closed themselves off from the outside world for long. So basically, if we go back here to the source, there's really some weird English in this. Yeah, here. Okay. Let's see. If we look at the areas around Korea, let's see. We have North Korea. Let's see. What did they say here? The Northeast Asian countries. Let's say I'll just look for a map. Northeast Asian countries. I want an image. I guess this is the best one. We'll look for something more colorful. Yeah, here, very small. The countries north of East Asia, also from the core Northeast Asia, is a broader region. Due scheme of Asia based on statistical. I guess is the best one we have. So we're looking at Mongolia, China, North Korea, South Korea, and Japan, and Taiwan. So I guess we can use this. Just download that. Globalization. Here. Okay. So if we look at this map here, um, we know China is a big player in globalization, but lately they have shifted to more protectionist policies, meaning they don't want to trade anymore globally. Mongolia, which I don't even know if they're part of globalization. North Korea definitely is limited in globalization as well. Not so sure about Taiwan. Basically, our globalization players, our main globalization players are Japan, South Korea, and China. And what the conclusion of this study is trying to say is that um, it's still what they call this touch and go. It's not very clear whether globalization will have a lot of or like have a larger impact in this region of the world because let's say 2 out of the 5 regions here have not joined or have closed themselves off from the outside world, not really foreign, don't really have a lot of friendly foreign policies. So let's go back again here. So again, we see similar to India and your other sort of presentations as well. I'll go into them even deeper. I haven't checked. I didn't have time. I'm so busy to check. Uh, we see in the emerging countries, similar to what we saw 2 weeks ago, that globalization has short-term benefits and usually involves a shift from either agricultural and manufacturing to the service sector. So we're looking at banking, health services, retail, food services, and education. However, this sudden shift, especially in Korea, has degraded the manufacturing and agricultural bases, which in this diagram, which I think is very accurate, shows that you need manufacturing and agriculture to survive or the sustain economic growth. So if you're all just here in the service sector, uh, basically health services, food services, and education won't be able or will reach a limit or a peak, a plateau where they can't develop further because there's no more electricity, there's no more what do you call this? Refine oil production, creating more useful forms of energy. There's no more agriculture, no food, so you can't sustain the service sector. So that's basically my understanding of this article, and maybe something similar is happening in your cities as well. So with that, it's 8 o'clock. I was going to give you guys a quiz, but I'm still making a quiz for the other class. I'll just have to give you an IOU. I'll share this PowerPoint with you guys. So I'll just put it here in the Google Classroom. I'll stop recording. Stop recording. And